I was wondering if you could answer a question for me that I've had for a while now, being in this beautiful community of Temple Bethel of South Orange County. Being dually affiliated is kind of confusing. Can you help me understand the differences, the philosophical differences that underlie the conservative movement and the reform movement?
Yes, thank you for that question. So we can talk about the philosophical differences between reform and conservative in theory and in practice. Now, in theory, it all has to do with relationship to the halakha. And halakha is a word that is used, Hebrew, means Jewish law. It literally means the walking, like the way that you walk. So the meaning of law is very tight, is very strong. The meaning of walking is a little bit more fluid. Throughout time, we Jews have tried to understand how to walk, how to live a righteous and kind and holy life, and through how we've interpreted the Torah. And so our rabbis in this second century really began to lay the foundation in the Mishnah and the Talmud for how do we behave ethically? How do we behave ritually? What do we do? Now, the conservative movement relies on a body of people called the Committee for Jewish Law and Standards to make decisions about how to interpret Jewish law for our modern age and modern times, because obviously things look a lot different than they did thousands of years ago. And so in theory, the philosophy in the conservative movement is that a conservative Jew would try best to live according to Jewish tradition as articulated by that body. Reform philosophy is that each one of us is an individual, and we choose what kind of relationship we have to the tradition, whether we find certain things meaningful, whether we want to follow this ritual or that ritual. Now, while the conservative movement says that we're really obligated to follow according to tradition for both ethical and ritual, the Reform follows more of the prophetic tradition, which says the ethical is what is primary, and the ritual is up to individual thought to interpretation. Now, I think that in practice, our community at Temple Bethel is really across the board reform. Across the board, all of us make individual choices. We don't form our Jewish lives in accordance with what the Committee of Jewish Law and Standards says, whether we pray in a conservative way or a reform way. And that's a really important part of who we are as a community.